he's coming at it from so many different directions. He's cutting spending by reducing the federal workforce. He's trying to eliminate fraud and waste, and he's moving federal programs into the states. So now the Department of Education will not be a federal expenditure, but the states will all, I guess they'll probably get money from the Fed, but they'll run their own education programs.
Right.
So he's reducing expenditures, and he's cutting fraud and waste. And he's selling assets. He's selling buildings, federal land, and he's generating revenue through tariffs and through the gold card, right? So he's doing a whole number of things, and all of them have different impacts on the economy. Certainly cutting the workforce immediately will be a drain. People find themselves out of a job, even if they got severance, they're not going to spend as much. The confidence is going to drop. Consumer expenditures will drop. So he's got to deal with that up front. And I think rather than finding, a stimulus, he's saying, okay, Musk is going to save us X billion dollars. We'll give some of that back to the public. And he sees that as stimulus to offset.
What's the cash? Hey everybody, welcome to Markets and Madness. As we like to say, the place where we discuss the madness that occurs when politics, economics, and personalities all move in different directions. We've got some technical issues today. Tim is actually doing this by phone, so you'll get to see my pretty face for the entirety.
Very lovely.
Yeah, so Tim, a lot going on, and there's a lot of things happening. The idea of a gold green card, the idea of postal workers taking care of the census. I saw an interview with Lutnick today, and it was very interesting. And I thought back to myself, this is a commerce secretary that's doing so much more than I've ever seen any commerce secretary do. I mean, I can't tell you the names of the last commerce secretary I remember was Ron Brown, only because he died in a plane crash.
When they started talking about $5,000 as a dividend from the Musk savings, from DOGE savings, it struck me that Trump may recognize that we're going to have a slowdown, maybe a recession, because he's got a timing issue. He cuts those jobs right away, and it takes a long time before the jobs get replaced, and the consumer is at peak, the consumer is stressed, so maybe we'll see a slowdown from the employment change. And he wants to stimulate, but rather than the Fed stimulating, he's doing stimulus directly by writing checks out of the DOGE savings. It's in other words, it's a fiscal injection of cash as opposed to a monetary injection.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought. I hadn't really thought of that. I thought he was just playing to the public. And, you get a lot of the liberals saying, yeah, it's his version of let them eat cake, throw 5,000 at them and they'll be happy. And the billionaires are getting, huge tax cuts. But I think your point is valid. We've been talking about all of it. And, another thing that I thought listening to politicians over the last 48 hours is what they're saying is, we're not going to cut Medicaid. We're not going to cut Social Security. We're not going to cut any of these programs that are genuinely helping people. But we are going to go after fraud and waste and cut those back so we could use those funds for people that need it. Well, there's a lot of people that are on the bubble that are, I guess you would say, straddling the line and getting checks, whether it be Social Security checks or Medicaid checks or whatever program, federal program is out there. I guess the government will consider that fraud, cut those away. These are people that are living on the edge. And that's going to be a big hardship too,
Yeah, that's true. He's coming at it from so many different directions. He's cutting spending by reducing the federal workforce. He's trying to eliminate fraud and waste, and he's moving federal programs into the states. So now the Department of Education will not be a federal expenditure, but the states will all, I guess they'll probably get money from the Fed, but they'll run their own education programs.
Right.
So he's reducing expenditures, and he's cutting fraud and waste, and he's selling assets. He's selling buildings, federal land, and he's generating revenue through tariffs and through the gold card, right? So he's doing a whole number of things, and all of them have different impacts on the economy. Certainly, cutting the workforce immediately will be a dream. As people find themselves out of a job, even if they got severance, they're not going to spend as much. Consumer confidence is going to drop. Consumer expenditures will drop. So he's got to deal with that up front. And I think rather than finding, a stimulus, he's saying, okay, Musk is going to save us X billion dollars. We'll give some of that back to the public. And he sees that as stimulus to offset.
What's the cash injection? Yeah.
Yeah. I prefer that to the Fed debasing the coinage, basically.
Yeah.
And adding to the money supply.
Just continuing to print. Yeah. Yeah. As we've said in the past, it was print and spend. It was borrow and spend. No, it was tax and spend, borrow and spend, and now print and spend, right? That's what we've gone from over the course of the last 40 years. Yeah, I mean, there is certainly a lot of moving parts. Every day is a new series of issues that are coming up. And this interview with Lutnick that I heard, Brett Baer interviewed Howard Lutnick, and it really was interesting. They talked about the post office. The post office loses $7 billion a year. He said to Lutnick, what do you think you could do with that? Do something with it. And Lutnick said, all right, I got some ideas. He says, the next day, he's all right, what do you got? It's not like you have a month to draw up some plans and look at it. All right, what do you got? So it's interesting. I know one of the things we've been talking about for a while is the idea of Europe spending more on their defense. And I saw yesterday something that came out on BBC that the UK government has agreed to increase their defense spending to, I believe it was 2.5 or 3% of GDP. So that moves all in line. Everything is moving in that direction. As I mentioned to you earlier today, I saw a commentator, I think it was Scott Jennings on CNN, saying if Trump's plan about Ukraine goes through, you're looking at a mineral deal for the U.S. You're looking at the Europeans increasing their defense spending, and you're looking at less lives being lost and a war coming to an end. How could you argue with any of those things? It's really benefiting the country and benefiting the world overall. I know there's a lot of people don't like him, don't see him, can't get him off the tip of their nose, but if that all comes true, you got to give him credit.
We talked about two-dimensional chess and three-dimensional. This is 8-dimensional chess.
Yeah.
So many different levels and places, and one impacting the other. We talked about in previous podcasts what happens if he sanctions Iran and releases oil sanctions on Russia, and what that does to maybe that's part of the Ukraine deal.
Right.
It brings Russia into the fold. Sanctions Iran. It helps the Middle East because there's less money for Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. It got so many different angles working at the same time. It's really tough to isolate all of the prevailing impacts. The gold card is really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, suppose you're a company like Microsoft, and you're looking to create, and you got a guy to head up a unit with, say, 50 people or 100 people, and you got to bring that guy in from India. Okay, $5 million is nothing to bring that guy in from India, And all of a sudden now, you got the guy you want heading up, and that guy would have gone in India and started his own company and hired 25 people. It's just exponential impact to all of these things,
I remember when Canada did it, probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It was there were certain criteria. I think you needed $1 million or more. You had to buy property and or a business and employ a certain number of people. And there was a huge influx of Asians that came into China, and that really blew up their housing bubble. As everybody came in, there was a real shortage of housing, and we saw that really take off. And
but the Chinese takeout.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But this is a copy of, this is something similar to that, only with much bigger numbers 20 years later. But it's the same thought. And, the question was brought up to Lutnick about vetting. He says, yeah, of course there's going to be vetting. Of course we're going to go through this. And apparently this is a program that's in place now. And there's certain aspects of I think the program, if my memory serves me correct, in this interview, he said, there are certain criteria where you have to start a business, you have to employ a certain number of people, and then there's 250,000 people on that list. He said, now, if all of them are serious people and have $5 million to buy in and move themselves up on the chain, well, that's a tremendous amount of money. That's a huge cut in the debt.
Yeah.
It really is. Right.
So he's reducing assets that are not only non-performing, but assets that cost money to upkeep.
That's right, to
It
maintain.
costs to upkeep a building, so he reduces workforce, he sells assets, he generates cash from tariffs, he generates cash from gold cards. And he's going about making a dent in this debt, significant. Really.
Yeah, and that's one of the big points that Lutnick made as well, saying if we can get this debt down, you're going to see mortgage rates back down to 2.5-3%. You're going to see interest rates collapse. We've talked about it. Bond market's down 50 basis points. The 10 years down 50 basis points, 40 basis points since the start of DOGE. The market has faith in it, and I think the liberal media doesn't have faith in it, and they're trying to knock it down every which way they can. But I think the bond market has faith in the results that DOGE is going to show, based on what the 10-year has done anyway. It's either that or they fear a recession, Well,
a reduction in inflationary expectations.
Right.
Any one of those things will push the bond market down.
Right.
Maybe it's a piece of all three.
Everybody's got their own view of the world, but they all come together. They all, get to the same point in the end. There was also a big discussion about tariffs. And I've been a big fan of India. I know we've talked about India can take over where the role that China's had. We've had that discussion many times. But what Lutnick was saying is when Modi came over last week and he said to Trump, he says, "You're right. We've had high tariffs on some of your imports, like Kentucky bourbon. I think there's had 150% tariff." He said, "What we're going to do is we'll lower it to 100%. And Lutnick is saying that's not good enough. He says the president's not happy with that. We're going to treat people the way they treat us. He brought up Canada, talking about Canada with, he says, they say that they don't have certain tariffs on certain dairy products, but they have a 5% VAT. So there's a 5% tariff right there. He says that everything that comes in, everything that we ship in gets hit with 5%. He said, so we're going to treat everyone the way they treat us. That's all, nothing more, nothing less.
That's a whole new paradigm. And I don't think he can do that. I think that's a negotiating position. And, okay, we'll leave this tariff intact if you give us this or if you give us that or if you do something else. He's going to look for other concessions because it's simply unrealistic to expect some of these countries to survive if they don't tariff us. You give away an entire industry. And that's the only one they got. Right. They're a one-horse town. And you're asking them to give up their horse.
Yeah, that is true. But we've said all along that tariffs were a negotiating point, and we're going to come down. But it seems like the drop dead date, from what he was saying, is April 2nd. There's going to be some things put into place April 2nd, and then some decisions will be made.
Well, yeah, but that's all part of the ready, shoot, aim process. I mean, we're going to shoot with the tariffs. Okay, let's have a quick meeting and see if we can fix what this broke for you. Yeah. He's breaking stuff. Undoubtedly, he doesn't mind breaking things to fit stuff in. I mean, he'll do what he's got to do. He's only got three. He doesn't have another 4 years to look forward to. He's basically got until the midterms.
I was talking to someone yesterday, and I mentioned that very point. Said, first term Trump 1.0 was very different because he couldn't ruffle that many feathers. He wanted to be reelected. Trump 2.0, he keeps laughing and joking about a third term, but that's not going to happen. but he doesn't. He can step on toes. He could break some eggs. He can do what he wants to do. He says, "I'm going to fix this problem that's been going on for 40 years. I'm going to take care of it, and I don't care what I got to do." But when I go down in the history books to saying Trump solved this problem.
Yeah, he's got a real cabinet too. I don't think I've ever seen a cabinet put together with this level of expertise. I mean, that guy who's Burgum, is that Burgum?
Yeah,
Really impressive guy.
he's the energy guy, right?
Between him and Lee Zeldin, energy policy is going to change dramatically.
Yeah. I saw something earlier today that I think Elon Musk was going, he was looking at the air traffic control system, and he said a lot of our air traffic controllers are not up to par, or I forget the term he used, but he says if you're a retired air traffic controller and you want to come back to work, we need you. So it's like, that's coming from Musk. That was very surprising.
Yeah. I can't imagine the kind of software these guys are working with. But there's
Yeah.
something going on.
You know,
And I don't know if it's air traffic or if it's pilot training, but there's something really happening that's out of whack here. Almost all the accidents we're seeing involve a small private plane somehow,
Yeah, I got to talk to Bruce and see what he knows on the inside. We have another friend who was in the market with us years ago. I see his face. His name escapes me. He did Canada for a while, and he was an air traffic controller. Bruce got him in when Reagan fired everybody, and he got reinstated years later with back pay, the whole thing, and he went back to work training the controllers. So that was his job, going back. They had to provide him, so be curious to see what his thoughts are.
One of the problems that governments have and human beings have is we resist preventive maintenance. We do it in every aspect of our lives. You should lose weight, but you don't.
Right.
You should paint that bridge, but you don't.
Right.
And you don't get around to it.
We'll get to it. It's the always we'll get to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Preventive maintenance has always been a problem, particularly with governments. And we saw 4 years where the agendas were refocused, and preventive maintenance, along with so many other things, just fell by the wayside. And I think that might be happening in the air traffic world. We may have just let the systems lapse, and we let training lapse, and we weren't proactive. That is the problem. As human beings, we're reactive. We're not proactive. It's hard for us to be proactive. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody to say that the Biden administration was proactive in anything except climate change. That was it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true to so many things. Think about some of the shovel-ready projects from, what was that?
Yeah.
Was that 12 years ago we were talking about shovel-ready projects? Yeah.
It was Obama.
Yeah.
Well, we borrowed the money either way. It was really dysfunctional. Government was dysfunctional, and I think that's the key difference. Now, maybe the Trump government is dysfunctional too. It's too early to tell, but it certainly doesn't look it. And he's very transparent about what he's doing. And I think that if I had to put a circle around the key difference between potential success and failure, it's that Trump 1.0 had a media that was aggressively against him, and the public was on the side of the media. And now Trump 2.0 has a media. The first thing is Twitter. Twitter went 180 degrees the other way.
Yep.
Now it's pro-Trump, whereas it was Twitter and anti-Trump. And you have the mainstream media who are losing viewership because the Biden years have cost the media its credibility. Between that and COVID,
Yep.
the media has no credibility now. And they're seeing transparently a functional, what appears to be a functional government, as opposed to hiding what you know is a dysfunctional government.
Right. And you still have the left, the fringe left, screaming and yelling that you got to trust the government, and people saying, well, I'll trust my own lying eyes before I trust the government. Everything that's gone on in the last, I want to call it 5 years. I've often said the first 60 years of my life, I believed everything the government said. And I've argued with some people who were on the other side of the aisle talking about some regimes that we took down and how the CIA played roles. And I was like, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. There was young people were talking about the 9/11 conspiracy theories. You're out of your mind. Now, after the last 5 years, scratch your head and say, well, maybe there's a sliver of truth to that. And maybe there is
Yeah.
more than a sliver of truth to that. It really is.
If you add to that, the reality that we only see a sliver of what's really true. I mean, you spend any time with somebody on the inside, and you find out that there's a whole world that you're missing. And we have such strong convictions based on such a small amount of accurate data that we're bound to be mistaken. You know, when I used to give the seminars to traders, I would say, look, you're in the trading room, you think you see a lot. You could go to a motel and scramp and crank up your computer and look on a screen. And inside of an hour, you'll convince yourself that that's all the information there is to see. And you'll start making decisions based on that small amount of data that you're seeing. Well, we just don't see very much. Maybe we see more now than we did. We don't see a hell of a lot. I'm by a bridge, and the bridge is opening up. Yeah, that's not my heart.
Yeah, that is so true. We think we see the whole universe, and what's happening is where different layers of the onion are being peeled back, and we're starting to see things. And I think over the last 5 years, we're seeing more, and I think people's eyes are opening up. The idea that, firing air traffic controllers, firing the people in the military who wouldn't take the shot, that was insane, and it wasn't proven. It's
right. What about people who had the disease and had natural immunities, and they wouldn't accept that? They demanded the death on top of that.
Arresting people on the beach, sitting on the beach by themselves. No, you can't be out. You can't be out. It really was a strange time that we've lived through, and we're going to come back the other way. We talk about politics moves in waves, and we move too far to the right, and then we come back and move too far to the left. And I think we're at the point now where we're starting to make that comeback. And it really is global. We talked about it the other day. Argentina, German elections this past weekend. The Prime Minister of Italy has become a lot more right-focused. I think everywhere you turn, the world is they're taking a deep breath and saying, I think we've been lied to.
Not everywhere, because Schumer, AOC...
Well, yeah, they're still the hardliners, but I'm saying globally, you're seeing governments that were very far left reevaluating that, and the public is coming back into their, what I'll say is their senses. Yeah, but
it doesn't look like it's 30 days away from imploding.
But Carville also said that if the Democrats keep up what they're doing, they'll never win another election. And then a week later, he said she was a horrible candidate. So, he comes from the Clinton era, so you can't really trust what comes out of there. On a market focus, I seen NVIDIA came out with, was it earnings yesterday or today? And from what I read, it looks like they beat earnings, yet the stock is getting beaten up again.
Yeah, there's been a big move from growth to value in the market. I think today may be the start of capitulation. Just get out of the technology sector.
Yeah, the GMO, get me out.
Yeah, could be there.
Yeah, we saw gold fail. Gold tried again to get, press above 3,000, and now it's back below 2,900. We may have some more room on the downside. We've had, some tremendous gains over the last.
My guys are talking about 2,400.
Really?
Peace in the Ukraine is not going to help gold.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
And a recession is not going to help gold. And the consumer is running out of gas. That's not going to help gold. Gold is losing its luster short term.
Yeah, but
We have to put helmets on.
3 days ago, Friday of last week, Monday, all of those things were still in vogue, and it was $29.60, and now it's $100 lower, $80 lower.
Somebody said that the North Koreans stole $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Broke into one of the banks, yeah. And that's why crypto is collapsed. I don't know if that's true, but My scenario all along since Bitcoin eclipsed 70,000 was, one of these
AI.
AI computers or even a quantum will crack these codes. And if the North Koreans got into one of the banks and stole $1 billion in Bitcoin, that's a big deal.
Well, I don't know. Probably that much has been stolen in the past several times. When Mount Gox went under, that was huge. Blankman Fried or Friedman Blank, whatever, SBF.
Yeah, but that wasn't stolen through.
That was misappropriated. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not. But you're looking at people who thought they had, were looking at their account statements and thought they had money in their account, and it was vaporware. It was nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it gets
another
protected.
It's another thing, though, if the whole blockchain is threatened. That's another animal altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they could do that, but the whole process is beyond me anyway.
Yeah, we got to get Alex Jahedi back on and discuss that. He was just out in Hong Kong. I think I got a call with him tomorrow. It's something different, but he was out in Hong Kong at the Consensus Show. That's supposedly the biggest crypto conference in the world. Consensus Hong Kong.
Well, he'll know about the North Koreans.
Yeah, get some input from him. Yeah. All right.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we got through our technical maladies here, difficulties, and let's see if we can piece together a podcast. But all right, Tim, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and talk to you tomorrow. Okay.